deep within the scorched deserts of Jordan, surrounded by a landscape that resembles the surface of Mars, lies a paradox. Not an impossibility, but a triumph so audacious it demands explanation. Petra. To the casual tourist, it is a photogenic ruin, a backdrop for selfies and film crews. But to the engineers and historians who have studied its construction, it is a masterclass in human problem-solving. A case study in what becomes possible when wealth, knowledge, and ambition converge in a single place. The question isn't whether humans could have built Petra. They did. The question is, how did they solve problems that would challenge engineers today? The treasury was carved from the top down. This seems counterintuitive, until you understand the logic. The uncarved cliff face itself was the scaffolding. Workers stood on the rock they hadn't yet removed, carving downward, erasing their own platform as they descended. The facade stands 39 meters tall and maintains remarkable symmetry. How do you achieve this without stepping back to check your work, the same way builders have done for millennia, with plumb lines measuring chords and templates? Dr. Judith Mackenzie of Oxford spent decades tracing the treasury's design language. She found its proportions weren't mysterious. They were Hellenistic. The Corinthian capitals, the broken pediment, the sculptural figures all follow conventions developed in Alexandria and adapted by Nabatean craftsmen who learned from Mediterranean masters. The tool marks tell a story of expertise, not mystery. Master carvers develop muscle memory. Their strokes become consistent through repetition, the same way a calligrapher's script becomes uniform. The uniformity of Petra isn't evidence of machines. It's evidence of tradition, of skills passed from master to apprentice across generations. This doesn't diminish the achievement, it clarifies it. The Nabateans took techniques developed across the ancient world and applied them to a medium no one else dared attempt to shear cliff face in a narrow canyon. The genius was in the adaptation. Step inside the rock-cut chambers and something unexpected happens. The acoustics are extraordinary. Sound doesn't scatter, it focuses. In certain spots, a whisper carries across the room with startling clarity. Researchers from multiple universities have measured the resonance profiles of Petra's interior chambers. Some exhibit acoustic properties comparable to purpose-built performance spaces. But this raises a question. Did the Nabateans understand acoustics, or did they stumble onto favorable properties by accident? The answer is probably both, and neither fully. Ancient builders learned through iteration. A small tomb teaches lessons that apply to a larger one. A chamber that sounds wrong informs the next design. Knowledge accumulates empirically, without formal theory. The urn tomb was later converted into a Byzantine church, suggesting its acoustic properties were recognized and valued centuries after construction. The Nabateans may not have had equations for frequency response, but they had ears, memory, and centuries of practice. This is how most ancient impossible knowledge actually worked. Not prophecy, not lost technology, but observation, repetition, and refinement across generations, a form of science without the scientific method. But if any achievement at Petra deserves the word genius, it's the hydraulic system. Petra receives less than 4 inches of rain per year. It should have supported a few hundred people at most. Instead, at its peak, it sustained a population of 20,000 to 30,000. The Nabateans didn't find water. They captured it. Every drop of rainfall was channeled, filtered, and stored. Surveys have mapped over 200 cisterns carved into the rock, some holding over 1 million liters. Ceramic pipelines ran for kilometers with precisely calculated gradients, dropping just enough to maintain flow without causing erosive pressure. The system included settling tanks for sediment and distribution networks that reached every quarter of the city. The engineering reflects hard-won knowledge of the local terrain. The Nabateans had lived in this desert for centuries before building Petra. They knew which rock layers held moisture, which crumbled, which could bear channels. This wasn't supernatural foresight. It was indigenous expertise, the kind that comes from generations of survival in an unforgiving environment. Similar systems appear throughout the Nabatean territory, growing more sophisticated over time. Petra represents the culmination, not the mysterious origin of this tradition. Petra sits in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth, the Dead Sea Transform Fault. In the past 2,000 years, multiple major earthquakes have struck the area. The Roman-built city center was destroyed in 363 AD. The colonnaded street collapsed. The bathhouses crumbled, but the treasury still stands. Why? Ground-penetrating radar has revealed part of the answer. Behind the ornate facades are hollow chambers voids that reduce the mass of the cliff face and allow the rock to flex during seismic events. The columns are carved in high relief but remain partially attached to the cliff, preventing them from toppling as freestanding pillars would. Were these features intentional seismic adaptations? Possibly. Petra sits on a fault line, and earthquakes were a known threat. But they may also reflect the inherent advantages of subtractive architecture. A facade carved into a mountain is fundamentally more stable than one built from stacked blocks. The honest answer is, we're not certain how much was deliberate seismic engineering and how much was fortunate consequence of the carving method. Both explanations credit human intelligence, one through foresight, the other through an elegant choice of technique. One question genuinely puzzled early researchers. Carving the treasury required removing approximately 8,500 cubic meters of sandstone. That's a small mountain of debris. Where is it? The surrounding valleys aren't buried in rubble. Early visitors speculated about impossible removal methods, but the real answers are more mundane and more interesting. First, time. 2,000 years of flash floods, wind erosion, and gravity have scattered and buried debris across the landscape. The Seek itself was partially filled with sediment until 20th century excavations cleared it. Second, reuse. Sandstone chips make excellent mortar aggregate and construction fill. The Nabateans built freestanding structures throughout Petra temples, markets, houses that required vast quantities of fill material. The debris from carving became the foundation for building. Third, deliberate removal. The Nabateans were traders obsessed with presentation. A dramatic entrance mattered. They likely carted away rubble to maintain the visual impact of the canyon approach. As for the missing tools' iron rusts, valuable implements were maintained, reused, and eventually recycled. The absence of a hammer doesn't mean no hammer existed. It means we're looking at a site picked clean by 2 millennia of subsequent inhabitants. One pattern, dozen by genuine curiosity. The Nabateans inscribed thousands of texts throughout Petra names, dedications, religious invocations. But the largest monuments, including the treasury, bear no carved inscriptions at all. Why would a culture so devoted to writing leave their greatest works unsigned? Several possibilities exist. The treasury may have been so famous in its time that labeling it seemed unnecessary, like carving Eiffel Tower on the Eiffel Tower. Inscriptions may have been painted rather than carved, lost to weathering. Or the building's function may have been understood through context, not text. The absence of inscriptions isn't evidence of unknown builders. The architectural style, the religious iconography, the construction methods all are consistent with the Nabatean tradition documented everywhere else at the site. The signature is in the design itself. There is a temptation, when confronting ancient achievements, to reach for mystery, to assume that anything impressive must be inexplicable. This reflex sells Petra short. The Nabateans were not primitive people, visited by superior knowledge. They were shrewd, adaptive, and brilliantly resourceful. They controlled the incense trade between Arabia and the Mediterranean. They negotiated with empires. They synthesized architectural traditions from across the ancient world and applied them to a medium-solid rock that amplified their grandeur while ensuring their permanence. The real wonder of Petra is human. It's the wonder of a desert people who built a paradise from almost nothing. Who turned a narrow canyon into a theater of power? Who solved hydraulic problems that would challenge modern cities? And who carved monuments so precisely that they've outlasted the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the Crusader kingdoms? Petra doesn't need aliens or lost civilizations to be extraordinary. It needs only what it has always had, evidence of what our species can accomplish when wealth, ambition, and knowledge converge. The silent architects weren't mysterious. They were us at our most resourceful, our most creative, and our most determined to leave a mark that would outlast the desert itself. The Nabateans didn't sign the treasury because they didn't need to. Everyone knew who built it, and now, so do you.